A beautiful, successful woman with an enormous social media following suddenly goes completely silent. The perfect photos, the endless praise. Everything stops as if someone abruptly cut her life in half. Then one morning, a chilling discovery by the side of the road shatters the flawless image she once projected.
Her nude body was found this weekend on the side of the road on Red Hall Lane in West Houston.
What truly happened behind the door of that house before the night came to an end? Alexis Sharkey was born on February 6, 1994, the first daughter of Stacy and Mike Robinault, and she was described as someone with a striking appearance, quick thinking, and a presence that drew attention wherever she went. The family later welcomed two younger daughters, and all three grew up in a stable environment, reflected through numerous photos of shared moments filled with laughter. Alexis graduated from Youngsville High School in 2012 and then attended the University of Pittsburgh, majoring in biology with minors in nutrition and psychology. These choices showed her clear direction for the future, with a focus on health and personal development. She once considered pursuing a medical career, but wanted time to explore herself before making a long-term decision. That pause led her to Houston, Texas in 2017, where the next chapter of her life began to unfold. In Houston, Alexis worked at Twin Peaks, a dining entertainment-style restaurant where the female staff typically handled serving roles. Thanks to her confidence and strong communication skills, she quickly became one of the standout employees, giving her access to a dynamic lifestyle filled with travel, social activities, and new experiences. Social media, especially Instagram, became the place where Alexis shared snapshots of that lifestyle. From outings with friends and upscale meals to fashion and wellness choices, her follower count grew rapidly, surpassing 78,000, according to the way Americans read numbers, helping turn Alexis Sharkey into a figure with a certain level of influence on the platform and drawing public interest to her personal life and the journey she was building. During her active presence on social media, Alexis met Tom Sharkey, a 49-year-old bodybuilder who frequently visited the place where she worked. Tom was older than Alexis by 2 decades, born in Fort Myers, Florida, and his educational background was not publicly detailed, leaving limited information about that period of his life. Before meeting Alexis, Tom had been through multiple relationships and had an adult daughter whom he continued to support consistently, both emotionally and financially. With a consulting job in the oil industry that provided a high income and constant travel opportunities between states, Tom lived a lifestyle that drew attention from many people. This aligned with what Alexis had always looked for, as she wanted a life of freedom, minimal constraints, and the ability to explore many places beyond work. Tom was described as someone charismatic in communication and well-known within the local community, allowing him to make strong impressions on those he met for the first time. After their initial encounter, Tom reached out to Alexis to talk about workout routines and nutrition. From those early conversations, the two quickly found common ground, and their shared interests gradually developed into a personal bond. By December 2019, the couple decided to get married. During this period, Tom frequently monitored Alexis's online activity and gradually appeared with her in various social media photos. From the outside, they were seen as a happy couple with an active lifestyle, often sharing moments together as if they were preparing to build a long-term and stable future. However, that seemingly perfect picture began to change on the morning of November 28, 2020, when police received a call from a man reporting that he had found someone lying motionless along a roadside area outside the town. When authorities arrived at the reported location, They had no way of knowing that this small detail would unravel a complex chain of events that would grow into a widely discussed case for a long time afterward. Officers arriving at the scene noted an unusual situation. Along the roadside area on Red Hall Lane, part of a person's body was visible through the surrounding vegetation, prompting them to conduct a careful inspection. The information had been reported by a local sanitation worker shortly before 8 a.m., who discovered the situation while carrying out his routine tasks. Realizing this might be a serious incident, and wanting to avoid disturbing any potential traces that could still be present, he immediately contacted police instead of approaching or moving anything in the area. After conducting a careful visual assessment, investigators approached the area cautiously to avoid disturbing any potential traces that might still exist. They identified the person at the scene as a young woman believed to be in her 20s. Notably, the victim was without clothing, yet her body showed no immediately visible signs of injuries or any clear cause connected to her loss of life. The condition of the body suggested she had likely been placed at that location shortly before being found, possibly during the night or the previous day. There was no evidence indicating she had arrived there on her own, making it entirely reasonable for authorities to consider the possibility of outside involvement. The questions now were who this woman was, why she appeared in a state without clothing, what circumstances led to her no longer being alive, and how everything had occurred. The body was then transported to the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office for a specialized examination, a necessary step to determine the cause behind the victim's loss of life. Although the analytical process was expected to take time, the woman's identity was quickly narrowed down because authorities had previously received a missing person report matching her description. Noticing the similarities between the report and the characteristics of the victim, officers contacted the husband of the woman who had been reported missing and requested that he come to the medical examiner's office to assist with the identification process, allowing them to confirm whether the body found belonged to the person he had been searching for. Tom Sharkey, 49 years old, was asked to appear for the official identification. He was a bodybuilder with a large physique, easily recognizable to anyone who had interacted with him. After viewing the victim at the medical examiner's office, Tom confirmed that the woman found was indeed 26-year-old Alexis Sharkey. This meant that the missing person report he had previously filed was no longer a situation awaiting clarification, but had now become an incident with severe consequences. During his discussions with authorities, Tom stated that he had hoped the identification would lead to a different outcome, wishing that Alexis had simply lost contact temporarily and would return. However, this confirmation ended all such possibilities, marking the transition of the case into an investigation focused on determining the circumstances that prevented her from returning home as expected.
And new information this noon hour, a woman's body found this weekend identified as Alexis Rovenal. She called herself a mentor on social media and had a popular Instagram account. Her nude body was found this weekend on the side of the road on Red Hall Lane in West Houston.
At the time Tom completed the identification, Alexis had been missing for more than 24 hours, a particularly critical window in disappearance cases because many traces can fade quickly. As the situation shifted toward investigating the circumstances that prevented her from returning, detectives followed standard procedure by approaching the people closest to Alexis to gather information. Since Tom Sharkey was believed to be the last person who saw Alexis before she disappeared, it was understandable that he became the first individual to be questioned. In incidents involving the loss of a person, the spouse is often considered the one most likely to provide valuable details for the investigation, including the individual's last known activities, emotional state, and events that occurred before the point when the victim lost contact with family and friends. Detectives wanted to understand the final events surrounding Alexis from Tom's perspective, so they asked him to recount everything in detail. According to Tom, Alexis had just returned home after a trip with friends to Tulum, Mexico, and she arrived back in Houston right before Thanksgiving on November 26th. That evening, the two had dinner together and spent time at home before going to bed. Tom stated that everything seemed normal until the next day, November 27th, when he claimed that Alexis began consuming harmful beverages throughout the day, something that her friends and family said did not align with her usual lifestyle. Tom added that he did not know why she acted this way, and insisted that no argument had occurred between them. According to his account, Alexis intended to drive while not being fully clear-headed, and he stopped her from doing so. He then said that Alexis left the house on foot. In an interview, Tom stated that there was mutual understanding between them and that he only tried to prevent her from operating a vehicle in an unsuitable condition, while her decision to leave was beyond his control, when Alexis did not return home the next day. Tom said he notified her parents, and they immediately contacted authorities to file a report. Alexis's mother, Stacy, was confused because she had spoken with her daughter just 3 days earlier and had noticed no unusual signs. After the missing person report was completed, Tom, along with Stacy and Alexis's friends, used social media to spread information in hopes of finding clues. Stacy posted a notice on Facebook asking the community for help in locating her daughter, emphasizing that Alexis had been living in Houston, Texas since January and had not appeared or made contact for more than 24 hours. The post urged people to share the information widely in hopes that someone might provide details that could help bring Alexis home safely. Because Alexis had a significant following on social media, she maintained an almost constant online presence, frequently responding to messages and posting content across multiple platforms. This made it easy for her friends to notice any change in her phone use patterns. However, starting on the evening of November 27th, Alexis no longer appeared on any of her online accounts, did not respond to messages, and did not answer calls, signs that deeply concerned those who knew her, as this behavior was completely opposite from her usual daily habits. During the early period when Alexis could not be reached, Tom proactively called many of her friends to look for information and was described as appearing quite stressed. However, what caught some people's attention was the inconsistency in his statements. At first, he said that the two had a disagreement, but later he denied that this happened. At one point, Tom claimed that Alexis left the house on foot without wearing sandals, yet later he mentioned that she drove away. The continual shifts in his account left those who knew her confused. In addition, although he lived with Alexis and was believed to be the last person to see her before she disappeared, Tom did not personally report the situation to authorities, something detectives took particular note of during the investigative process. However, before the search efforts could progress any further, on the morning of November 28th, a body matching Alexis's description was discovered and later confirmed to be hers. At that point, the circumstances leading to her loss of life had not yet been determined, prompting several early theories, including the possibility that she had been affected by an unfamiliar substance or experienced an incident related to the use of harmful substances. The second theory was dismissed almost immediately by her family and friends, as they described Alexis as someone with clear direction, a positive outlook, and excitement for future plans. During interviews, those close to her consistently stated that she had no history of using illegal substances, had stable emotional health, and showed no negative signs before her disappearance. Although investigators reviewed the individuals closest to Alexis, none of them were considered direct concerns at that time, which forced detectives to continue expanding the scope of the investigation to determine what had truly happened. During the process of gathering statements, detectives noted a significant detail provided by one of Alexis's close friends. This friend, who had traveled with Alexis to Mexico, said that Alexis had confided that her marriage to Tom was not as harmonious as the image they projected on social media. Although the couple appeared to be living in an ideal relationship, unresolved conflicts existed behind the scenes. While in Mexico, Alexis showed affection toward a local DJ and spent considerable time talking with him, suggesting that she was seeking emotional comfort. However, according to her friend, Alexis did not engage in any behavior that crossed boundaries or went against her marital commitment, as she still wanted to maintain respect for her legal relationship with Tom, although no one could identify the exact issues within their relationship. Alexis's cautious behavior suggested that she sensed noticeable tension whenever she was around Tom. According to friends, Alexis avoided creating any situation that might lead to conflict because she believed Tom had moments that made her feel uneasy. In several private conversations, Alexis had expressed that at times she felt uncertain about her own sense of safety. As detectives looked deeper into their personal lives, they discovered that Alexis and Tom were in the process of preparing for divorce proceedings, a detail neither of them had shared with friends or family, indicating that the strain in their marriage had been building long before the incident occurred. Although the divorce process was underway, detectives initially did not consider it a clear enough reason for Tom to act negatively toward Alexis, especially since he consistently presented himself on social media as a loving husband who often praised his wife. After Alexis was confirmed to have lost her life, Tom appeared online with posts expressing grief. However, what drew attention was that only a few days later, he began portraying Alexis as someone who struggled with personal turmoil, a depiction completely opposite from the image her friends and online community had always known. This raised concerns because, typically, someone who has just lost their spouse would not publicly make comments that could affect the dignity of the person who had passed. These inconsistent behaviors quickly triggered widespread suspicion online, especially as Tom shifted his tone and offered information that did not align with what he had told authorities. Friends and followers of Alexis sensed irregularities in the way Tom presented the story, leading them to question whether he might be hiding something related to the situation. What stood out was that the more negative comments Tom made about Alexis online, the more backlash he received from the community, as her followers began speaking up to defend her image. In this context, instead of easing pressure, Tom's online behavior only intensified the suspicion surrounding him. Meanwhile, Alexis's body remained at the medical examiner's office for more than 2 weeks, because Tom, as her next of kin, was the person authorized to make decisions regarding the next steps. Although Tom had previously agreed with Alexis's family that she would be brought home for burial, he did not take any action to initiate the process, nor did he follow up with the family or the medical examiner. This unexplained delay continued to raise questions among investigators and those following the case about Tom's intentions and true motives during such a sensitive period. Faced with these unexplained delays, Stacy, Alexis's mother, began to grow concerned. Tom stopped responding to messages or communicating with the family, forcing her to contact authorities directly to understand what was happening. However, officials encountered the same issue, as Tom had ceased all cooperation and did not reply to any requests for communication. His sudden silence caused Alexis's post-incident arrangements to stall and continued to raise questions about his role in the unfolding situation. Because Tom no longer responded or made the necessary decisions, the medical examiner's office officially transferred next of kin authority to Stacy so that the procedures could move forward. As a result, Alexis's funeral was able to take place on December 19, 2020. The service was held privately and without informing Tom, and throughout this time, he made no effort to inquire about the arrangements or ask any questions regarding the burial, showing that he was essentially absent from the entire post-incident process. Tom's lack of cooperation prompted authorities to broaden the scope of their investigation. And on January 19, 2021, the specialized analysis determining the cause of Alexis's loss of life was released. The medical report indicated that she had sustained significant pressure to the neck area, leading to an inability to breathe, which confirmed that this was an incident involving outside interference rather than an accidental event or the result of harmful substance use. This conclusion immediately changed the nature of the case, as the absence of clothing and the way her body had been placed beneath the vegetation did not align with any theory of a random incident, forcing investigators to consider the possibility that someone had directly contributed to the circumstances that prevented Alexis from returning home. Even so, determining the cause of Alexis's loss of life opened a new direction for investigators, allowing them to officially evaluate and temporarily detain individuals who might be connected to the situation. At this stage, there was essentially only one person who became the primary focus of law enforcement. However, once the specialized findings were released and the case was reclassified as one involving outside interference, the only individual detectives urgently needed to speak with was no longer present at his residence and had ceased all communication, making efforts to reach him significantly more complicated. As a result of Tom abruptly cutting off communication, authorities spent several months trying to determine his whereabouts. During this time, they discovered that Tom had left Texas shortly after Alexis was confirmed to have lost her life, indicating that he departed without notifying either the family or law enforcement. His social media accounts went completely silent, providing no clues about his location and making the search increasingly difficult. However, after extensive information checks, officers were eventually able to trace him, determining that Tom was in the state of Georgia, which opened the next phase of the investigation. After multiple attempts to reach him by phone to request his cooperation, investigators reported that Tom agreed to provide a DNA sample in August 2021 for comparison and analysis. However, when the scheduled date arrived, Tom did not show up and offered no explanation, further reinforcing the conclusion that he was avoiding law enforcement contact and creating additional obstacles for the investigation. Based on the data collected, investigators documented a series of behaviors from Tom that made him a person who needed to be examined closely. His statements about the events leading up to the time when Alexis lost contact changed over time. He had made negative remarks about his wife on social media, then stopped communicating with Alexis's family and refused to continue working with detectives. Notably, although he agreed to provide a DNA sample as requested, he did not appear for the appointment. Putting these details together showed no sign of constructive cooperation, and for that reason, Tom was considered someone who needed to continue working with authorities to clarify the inconsistencies in the investigation. From the information gathered, Tom quickly became the central figure that officials needed to scrutinize, because factors related to timing, circumstances, and his level of access to Alexis all indicated that he could have influenced how the situation unfolded. During their review, detectives also discovered that Tom had shown controlling behavior and conflict in the marriage, suggesting that the household atmosphere was not as harmonious as the image presented to the public. This made the theory that their divorce process had been unfolding under tension more significant, and it was treated as one of the factors that needed to be analyzed when assessing the broader context of the case. On September 29th, authorities officially requested and obtained a warrant for Tom's arrest, marking the beginning of a federal-level effort to locate him. Shortly afterward, detectives determined that Tom was in Fort Myers, Florida, where he was believed to be staying with his daughter. Due to the nature of the case and Tom's history of avoiding cooperation with investigators, law enforcement had to implement a careful approach to prevent any unforeseen situations. Officers monitored the area from a safe distance and observed Tom appearing at the residence multiple times, indicating that he was using his daughter's home to reduce attention from authorities. This discovery confirmed that Tom remained in the area, enabling the next steps toward his apprehension. To prevent the possibility of Tom leaving again, law enforcement planned to approach the house the following day after confirming he was still inside. Upon arrival, police secured the area and followed proper procedures to enter the residence. Tom's daughter opened the door, and officers quickly moved inside to search. After checking the entire ground floor without finding any sign of Tom, they expanded their search to the upper levels. At that moment, a loud noise came from the second floor, signaling an unexpected development and making officers realize that the situation had shifted beyond what they had anticipated, showing that Tom was capable of unpredictable reactions and willing to take the events in a direction no one could fully control. When officers moved up the stairs and approached the room where the noise had come from, they found Tom lying motionless on the floor, showing no signs of life. According to the findings at the scene, he had caused severe harm to himself using a dangerous object, preventing authorities from intervening in time. This action was seen as an attempt to end all further inquiry related to the case and to stop the investigation from progressing. Tom's choice to conclude the situation in this manner led officials to determine that he was directly connected to the circumstances that prevented Alexis from returning home. And although there would be no trial, his refusal to cooperate, his departure from Texas immediately after the incident, and his extreme decision at the time he was being sought closed all remaining questions about his role in the case, meaning the investigation involving Alexis Sharkey officially came to an end.
The husband, wanted in the death of a social media influencer in Houston, was found dead Tuesday in Fort Myers, Florida. HPD says Tom Sharkey was wanted for the murder of Alexis Sharkey. U.S. Marshals were about to arrest the husband at the Florida home, but say he took his own life just moments before they could arrest him. This all comes nearly a year after Alexis Sharkey's death.
The outcome of the case left Alexis's family with little chance of ever knowing exactly what happened in the final hours before she was unable to return home. Tom's extreme decision closed off every possibility of clarifying motives or reconstructing the detailed sequence of events, as the only two people who could provide those answers were no longer able to speak. Detectives stated that they did not find physical traces at the couple's home or in either of the vehicles that could directly implicate Tom, and in theory, had he survived and gone to trial, the result might not have been guaranteed. However, his departure from Texas immediately after Alexis was found, his refusal to cooperate, his avoidance of the DNA request, and the action he chose at the moment authorities were closing in formed a chain of events strong enough for investigators to conclude that he was directly connected to the circumstances that prevented Alexis from having any chance to return, even though no clear physical evidence was documented. According to the investigative analysis, the most plausible scenario involved a conflict between the two in the period leading up to the time when Alexis could no longer be reached. Several factors may have affected Tom's state of mind, such as the ongoing divorce process or information related to the friend Alexis had met during her trip to Mexico, both of which were considered details that could have intensified tension between them. Based on the collected data, officials concluded that this was likely a relationship dispute, which had already shown signs of imbalance beforehand. Notably, the physical differences between the two, combined with Tom's history of controlling behavior and applying pressure within the marriage, made this theory more seriously considered. Alexis was believed to have concealed the difficulties in the relationship, preventing her from seeking timely support. Experts noted that situations involving conflict between couples often unfold quietly, can occur at any age, gender, or social background, and do not always manifest clear outward signs. Concerns about Tom's controlling behavior toward Alexis had been noted by her family beforehand, and after the incident, these suspicions were partially confirmed. Although Tom portrayed himself as a successful man with an active social life, those who knew Alexis often sensed unease about the relationship, even if they were unaware of the full extent of the tension between the two. Alexis was believed to be preparing to complete the process of ending the marriage and was getting closer to rebuilding her own life. However, that process was interrupted by the events that prevented her from ever returning. Legal documents showed that Alexis was approaching the final stages of the divorce, and had no incident occurred, she might soon have separated from what was considered an unhealthy environment. Although Tom did not face a courtroom trial due to what happened afterward at the place where he was hiding, his decision to end all inquiries at the moment he was being sought led authorities to close the case with the determination that he was directly connected to the circumstances that denied Alexis the chance to continue her life. This conclusion also meant that Tom would no longer be able to affect anyone else in the future, which is why the case was officially closed. The case of Alexis Sharkey came to a close without a trial, without a final explanation, and without anyone left to answer the questions that remain unresolved. This story reminds us that what is shared on social media is often only the surface of a far more complex reality hidden behind closed doors. Alexis was once seen standing before a wide-open future, yet every plan she had ended forever in a single moment no one could have anticipated. To this day, her family still does not know what happened in the final moments of that fateful interaction, and it is likely they will never receive a complete answer. If you have thoughts or perspectives on this case, feel free to leave a comment below. Share this video so more people can learn about the story of Alexis Sharkey and the meaningful lessons about the silent signals that can exist within relationships. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to continue following more stories in our journey through true crime cases. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.